Hi, my name is Kirk Hamilton, your host of the Staying Healthy Today show. This is a show where we bring you key experts and current research in the fields of nutrition, prevention, integrative, and lifestyle medicine. Sometimes we'll talk about geopolitics if it affects our health and our freedom. And so today, I don't have an interview, but I want to go over this loaded Substack that I have because there's a lot of information here and I want to make it worth your while to get through it. So the title would be I wanted to highlight an inconvenient study. This was a documentary that has just come out in the last several months by Dale Bigtree. He's a former CBS producer. He worked on the Doctors, and a very successful show. And he's been in, how could I say, I think, the good anti-vax movement. And he's a confidant of RFK, and he's just done some incredible work. So, what he wanted to do during his journey of trying to show that there's a problem with childhood vaccinations is he wanted to just do a really really good study, and he came across a Dr. Marcus Servos, MD. He's from the Henry Ford Health System, huge healthcare system, very well known, and he shared with him his desire to do a study that would compare uh, a large number of vaccinated children with non-vaccinated children, and then see what happens, see what illnesses occur, because there's been smaller studies that have shown that the non-vaccinated children have less health ailments. But he wanted to do the good big study. And to his surprise, initially Dr. Serbos said that he would do this study. He expected it to come out that the vaccinated children would do better. And so Dale Bigtree, before he left, just said, will you guarantee me you'll publish it no matter what? And he said that he would do that, even if the results were counter to what he thought, that the vaccinated group would have more issues and more problems. Well, to make a long story short, this was 18,000, over 18,000 participants. These are children, and they were split up into the vaccinated and non-vaccinated. And it turned out it was done impeccably. And you'll see that he does some undercover filming that is quite dramatic. But the bottom line is it showed that the vaccinated children had much more chronic diseases and health issues. And he goes undercover to interview Dr. Servos afterwards because he's not going to publish the study. And I'll let you listen to the trailer and such and see why he doesn't. But it's a very, very powerful documentary. And it's obvious that, the vaccinated children, if this study would have been published, it could have changed medicine. I mean, it really could have rocked a lot of foundations. So that's the first part. Excellent documentary. And kind of in conjunction with that, there was an interview by Peter McCullough. I follow him a lot. He's an MD, cardiologist, epidemiologist, and he interviews one of the lawyers that takes on these cases of vaccine injuries. The lawyer wrote a book called Vaccines Amen. And it's a great interview. I have a link to that. And just to see what this uh, well-learned lawyer who is very much into this field shares about his journey about supporting vaccine injured people. And then right underneath that, I have an interview that I put a link to Andrew Wakefield, which brings me back to my roots in the early 2000s, where I listened to Andrew Wakefield speak. He was a gastroenterologist from the UK who noted that there was in these autistic children who had gastrointestinal complaints and then ultimately behavior disorders, lymphoid hyperplasia. And so he thought there was some gut connection to the MMR vaccine triggering this problem and then eventually affecting behavior. And to see him, you know, after 25 years, it's just the time is short. And he weathered the storm. They retracted his paper. He's gone through a lot of persecution, and it was good to see him being interviewed. So that was an interview by uh, the McCullough Foundation's Nicholas Holscher. He's a master of public health. So that's an excellent link. And then there was a part of this where there was like, it says 7 everyday habits that raise blood pressure. And I just thought I'd read a couple of them to you. So low sun exposure. We need the sun to normalize our hormones, vitamin D. And so low sun exposure might have increased blood pressure. Sleep apnea, that's a pretty obvious one where you can sometimes, you stop breathing at nighttime. Usually it has to do with allergies or sometimes weight up in the upper respiratory tree. But sleep apnea and hypertension, or sleep apnea, can increase the risk of hypertension. Prolonged sitting. I have to raise my hand. I sit a lot, but I get up and down between patients. So it's not that bad. It's not like sitting at my desk writing for hours, but still, sitting is a problem. A single bout of prolonged sitting can augment very short term blood pressure variations. Hydration. That could be another one that I could work on. I have low. I don't have high blood pressure. I actually have kind of low blood pressure, hovers around the hundreds. But drinking adequate fluid helps maintain your blood pressure. Obviously, eating ultra processed foods can increase your blood pressure, so don't do that. And then the last two were men with high blood pressure. Sometimes they can be quick to anger. It was like men with high blood pressure have a biased recognition of other people's anger. Maybe they sense anger in other people. And then this other one was blood pressure reactivity and recovery to anger recall in hypertensive subjects. So those are some simple things we can do. I like the ones with, I walk out in the sun. I love walking in the sun. Um, Now it's raining, but I'm going to have to wait till springtime. Um, and then sitting, I can work on that. I mean, just getting up and moving, but that's good for everything. Then there was a little article on espresso versus the benefit of espresso versus coffee on brain function, and helps with that. Then to mention vitamin D. So everybody talks about vitamin D. It's kind of it's a hot topic, and sometimes those aren't good just to pick up popular topics, but this is the real deal. So vitamin D, you want to get your level, in my opinion, and many between 50 nanograms per ml and 75. Your doctor will probably try and get you above 30. That's classic deficiency. So that takes about 5,000 to 10,000 IU of uh, vitamin D, and then you want to have some vitamin K1 or K2 along with that. There's a concern about the Canadian healthcare system and euthanasia and in disabled people. And it was an issue brought up by William Mackus, who's been very involved with that. So something to pay attention to. I'm going to have a show on organ harvesting, live organ harvesting. In our country, you have to wait for organs. In communist China, they have actually do it from prisoners and people of conscience, religious people. So euthanasia is an interesting topic. There's one on question, what was done by Epoch Times on American thought leaders, was questioning the climate change agenda. And we know that Bill Gates has changed his mind and saying that the climate crisis is not what it was made out to be. Obviously, I personally think that we can affect the climate, but the climate is always changing, and it always has been changing. And I remember when we were supposed to have a freeze when I was a younger man, and so we need to be careful about the climate issue, and how we do it, because energy, special fossil fuels, help poor people. If they had access to fossil fuels, energy is what keeps people, lack of energy is what keeps people poor. So we have to be careful how we do that, and the pollutants that we get from so-called, and I'm a big fan of solar and that kind of stuff, but solar panels come from rare earth minerals that come from usually very poor countries, African countries, mining these rare earth minerals, and it's not as circular as you might think. And I used to be a huge fan, but now I'm split the road, so to speak. So there's an article about that, questioning that. SSRI tapering, we talked about that before, but the SSRIs are serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and they can be tapered, and they should be tapered slowly. And then I always review, usually William Mackis's MD's radiation oncologist from Canada, and I review and put links to his cancer cases, and there must be 20 or 30 in this issue, ranging from appendix cancer to breast cancer, to colon cancer, lots on colon cancer, glioblastomas, lung cancer, lymphomas, multiple myeloma, pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, renal cell cancer, testicular cancer. What these all have in common is we've heard of repurposed drugs in cancer that block the metabolism of cancer. And you will see in what I encourage my patients to do have cancer, if we're using repurposed drugs, is to get a subscription to Dr. Max's work so they can see the case studies he puts up. Like, I don't know, seems like at least one a day or two a day, but he puts them up, and then he has a history of these patients. They'll email him, and you'll see some of the cases, and then he has a summary at the end. But the bottom line is this: usually, the treatment dose for cancer, when you use ivermectin, which is a anti-cancer drug, and we'll go over some of its benefits, are 1 milligram per kilogram is kind of where you want to get up to, work up to that over a couple of weeks. Maybe 1.5 milligrams per kilogram of ivermectin, and then mebendazole or fenbendazole. Fenbendazole is used for the veterinary community, but I call them cousins. Mebendazole is where you can write a prescription, but those are usually between 1,000 and 2,000 milligrams. You pick out one of them, and those are used in the cancer treatment. So the 1 to 1.5 milligram per kilogram of ivermectin, and usually 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of mebendazole or fenbendazole. Sometimes fenbendazole has a little bit more liver enzyme elevating possibility. So you always want to, at least all my patients, I start sometimes, depending on how sick they are, at least do it once a month, but sometimes I'll do it weekly as I'm getting people worked up on their dosage of those two drugs, but especially fenbendazole. Then the other thing that the COVID vaccine might increase the risk of is autoimmunity. So we have a thing here on COVID-19 vaccine and arthritis. We have another one on rheumatologic conditions. And in those cases, hydroxychloroquine might be a benefit in the overall approach to those conditions that were triggered by the vaccine. And then vaccines causing kidney damage or kidney disease, speeding up neurologic disorders. So we always have, the harm of the messenger RNA vaccine or gene therapy. It should be taken off the market, in my opinion, and many other people's opinion. So I keep kind of a little tabs on that. So that's just part of the newsletter, the health letter. Again, the links are all there. So when you go to the post, you can scan through my discussion and then see some highlights. And the whole goal of the health letter is to get people to be able to get to information quickly, because one thing is we're all overwhelmed with information. And so I just want to get you some things that you can use. And I'll talk to you soon. You have a great day. Thank you.